Hello, good morning. Hope everybody had a wonderful and a Merry Christmas, a Happy Christmas. Um, so we'll start to kind of get back into, normal life, right? Back into a groove. Um, so here we are. You're at the Edge Academy and the Analytical Edge Academy, and we're getting through, whether you're on module 1 or module 3, module 4. I hope that you look at the depth of critical thinking. We often, as individuals, not even just professionals, we really don't accurately look at our perspectives. Do we, on a daily basis, as professional analysts, really look at what we are doing when we are, reviewing a piece of information, when we are trying to dissect a problem and come up with a decision of judgment, assign assign confidence levels to information itself. We don't, do we? I was guilty of this for decades as an analyst, and um, really started to look at critical thinking as going far back as 10, almost 15 years ago with my time at the FBI. Because when I went through the academy, they gave us a couple of books. Target Centric Analysis was a really good book, and really did get you to focus on how are you going to be thinking of getting your target or getting to your target. And I applaud the thought process to this in the foundations that it teaches us of. You got to look at peeling back layers only by asking questions. Critical thinking lends itself not just to the end of, here's some good decision making, here's the resolution, here's the answer. That's not necessarily what critical thinking is all about. The analytical mindset should be asking better questions. That if we are not asking better questions, if we are not, and I detest the cliches of connecting the dots or going down rabbit holes. But sometimes, in order to explain things, I think we have to. That if we start to think about what information we're looking at, and we know information can be incomplete, misleading, so we bring in misinformation, disinformation, even to the point of blatant propaganda. All too often in our personal lives, we count on these little bits of information we gather from TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat, you know, X. And people really, we see it every day. People believe in that little 2 second, 5 second, even 10 seconds, which still is not enough. It doesn't give it context. It doesn't give it the evidence. It doesn't give it the examples to solidify that this information is true, it's accurate, it's factual. The contextual, we see videos that can be cut to make it seem to play into what we want it to be, whether we're just the individual taking it in or we're the one putting it together and propagating it out. That is the one, those are some of the big things that I really find we still do to this day. And then we have to kind of bring in the AI aspect as well. So if you refer back to my first book, Precision and Perspective, um, I made it to be a rather easy read for individuals because, and I didn't want to get into the technical, but I sort of do because I start talking about structured problem solving. But, I want to give that idea to individuals about the decline of critical thinking in our society and where we are now. What I also start to talk about is philosophy. We look at the intelligence community of today, and of course, to be an intelligence analyst, to be an operations officer, to be case officer, to be an agent, the minimum qualification is a bachelor's degree. But we look at the intellectuals of intelligence, going back to the beginnings of our actual intelligence community. And, whether that's in the late 1940s, we get into the 50s with, of course, in the 40s with the OSS. We look at what Benchley Park and their analyst of code breakers. These were scientists. These were people with master's degrees, with PhDs, not applied doctorates, which I'm not knocking applied doctorates, but we're getting away from the philosophical frameworks that lead us to questioning. That's why I think philosophy is probably the number one issue that I have with our intelligence community. We don't expect individuals to question. We expect the individuals going through, the farm or through Quantico or through the service academies for officers, or even the services and their intelligence schools. We don't want to know their thought processes, which could be, of course, flawed, severely flawed, handicapped, non-existent. And we see a lot of this now, of course, in the scandals, and we've had scandals for decades, for almost a century. I went back in my second book all the way back to the 1960s with the Gulf of Tonkin, and how this was a scandal in and amongst itself. Not necessarily a failure, but I'm talking about the injection of political ideologies. And we've seen this with analysts, with agents, with leadership from these organizations. How do we combat this? And we severely are handicapped as a society. We don't teach critical thinking in schools. We don't want critical thinking in schools. Not that I don't want it. It's the powers that be are the ones that don't want it. They don't want a society bent on being able to stand up based on their thought processes. Right now, there is no thought processes. You see whole swaths of society stuck in a victim mentality due to the fact that they can't critically think. They don't want to critical think. They don't want to learn. We've made school this regimented, you just have to go check in the box. We're not flourishing. And I'm not even just talking our K through 12, talking about our higher education as well. I see day after day of individuals in master's programs and in doctoral programs that if I was the lone gatekeeper, I would say you're not worthy. You can't think. I mean, you're emailing me for directions that are already in the syllabus or already in the assignment. Is that the expectation of a doctor? Yes, I could see if there were issues, but and it's hard to come off with a genuine concern due to the fact that I can laugh at it, but I can't show you the the idiocracy that it represents, that I find myself writing the same line over and over to students. It's in the directions. Did you read the directions carefully before you go on to the next assignment? And then they've already turned in the next assignment before they've even responded or even gotten my feedback from the previous one. So they're so quick to do a check in the box. They're not thinking. And these are individuals who want to go into such things as intelligence. And I've met many colleagues who are brilliant and have that critical thinking aspect, and we are on the same page and we're thinking about the same things, and yet we agree. And I present a lot on about the critical thinking, about how we're not, I mean, I'm at the foundational level of why we're not critical thinking. I mean, I have intelligence colleagues who are professionals that when I ask them the point blank question of it, explain to me the analytical mindset that we should have, explain to me proper argumentation. What are fallacies? What are the 18 different fallacies? See, these are the things that even professionals can't answer. And I'm hoping and praying that as you go through this academy, these are the small things that I'll be bringing up. Now, again, I have to have foundational levels for the individuals who are curious, who want to learn about critical thinking and sharpen that edge and really understand when they're talking to an individual at a Christmas party who's lying straight to their face or embellishing on information, that we can pick it apart, we can identify it, and then be able to dissect it. And not that we want to humiliate somebody, but that we can actually understand for ourselves, well, what they're talking about or what they're arguing, because of course we bring up politics every single day and we can't get away from it. Politics is a big part of our lives, and that actually is by and large by design. Same with football, same with baseball, same with golf. The powers that we go all the way back to the Roman times to keep the population really just flat is to entertain them, is to distract them. That's why I think a lot of the news is nothing but political theater. It's to keep us distracted. Well, yes, a lot of it is serious. A lot of it also is to distract us. And if you know that cycle is so quick, right? With new problem, nothing is even talked about within 24 hours later. Problems that were brought up are no longer brought up because we're on to the next thing. Our attention span is so quick and over with that do we even have the understanding of being able to pick out, wait, what happened to this really bad thing yesterday? We're already on to the next bad thing. And that's by design. Distraction, smokescreens. I want you to be able to identify these things. I'm not a the sky is falling type person, but as we start to pick through argumentation and understanding information, and when I say that, I mean being able to discern whether it's misinformation, it's disinformation, it's propaganda, it's incomplete, it's argumentation is flawed from the beginning, it's full of fallacies. What fallacy does it follow? You know, that is something else of getting into, is that argumentation and the role that critical thinking really plays. Because if we're not questioning, and argumentation doesn't mean it has to be a confrontation or it has to be adversarial. Argumentation is how do we start a conversation. That's the other issue we have in this society, is people don't know how to have a conversation. But let alone when someone wants to have an opposing idea, how do you start off that argumentation based off, say, somebody wants to have a conversation and brings up something of a political nature? Easy one to do, right? Because everybody has their own thoughts, their own opinions. Um, and when we say thoughts, ideas, perspectives, to me, if it's done in a structured, analytical mindset, that's awesome. That's exactly where I want to be. We have to get away from this opinion and beliefs. Now, opinion and beliefs are more anchored in emotion, because if someone has a belief, their argumentation is already going to be flawed based on, well, if I believe this to be true, my beliefs already injected emotion and may have omitted on purpose evidentiary examples, sources, methods that would then play a significant part in already getting rid of my argument altogether. It would nullify it, right? It would void it. It's not even an argument. But if we start to really understand a discussion, a debate, when someone starts with, whether again, their opinion or beliefs, or they have their own thoughts and perspectives and they've been thinking about it and they've cultivated it, we have to be able to, as a critical thinker, understand their argumentation. Where did it start? What is the basis? And to be able to ask these questions without the other individual wanting to become so offended and get on the defensive. We can caveat things that, rather than saying, I don't believe you, I think you're wrong, those automatically set somebody up to be so defensive. And sometimes they take it as an insult, right? If they're going to be insulted, you can say, while that's interesting, I'd love to hear more about how you formulated this. This is information I haven't heard before. Can you give me more examples, or can you show me exactly the evidence that you had to formulate that? That's very interesting. I hadn't thought about that. You're almost kind of putting them more, your whole idea is to put them more at ease without discounting that they are wrong. And I've done this before too. I've spoken before I've really formulated my thought process. To me, it's a collaborative thinking. You can work with somebody that originally had come up with a adversarial or opposing viewpoint and leverage collaboration. Now, collaboration and critical thinking can also be brainstorming, working with a small working group, putting together a diverse collective of individuals to not only just problem solve, but maybe come up with new ideas. That you don't need a problem solve. You're coming up with new ideas, maybe a new vision. So when we want to enhance our research and our analysis, yes, we can choose to do it alone, but why try to do things in a vacuum? I say working in a vacuum is not the best idea. Conducting our own research, seeing where it leads, asking those important questions, jotting down notes. See, we're also a society that no longer takes notes. I kind of noticed this in both the K through 12 as well as the higher education. It's very rare that I meet a student, let alone colleagues, when I collaborate with colleagues, when I find that they don't take notes about what they read, they don't take anything down, not only just information, but writing questions about information they're reading. Because all the time that we're reading, we're sifting through in our minds, we're sifting through disparate pieces of information. We're coming up with new thoughts, ideas, perspectives, but if we're not taking those down, if we're not making actual physical note, whether it's now using AI to do it and say, hey, I need you to take a note down. But we try to say, I'm going to take a mental note. No, that's going to, gone, right? How many times have we said, oh my gosh, I was thinking about something and you forget? We're not shaping our critical thinking skills if we're not continuing to write things down or to physically make a note physically. And you should. And you got to remember that critical thinking is not a trait. I've had students that I've worked with for a year or two and watched them flourish as I've tried to push this agenda of critical thinking, that I'm telling them, stop relying on your opinions and your beliefs and start being this critical thinker, that you're questioning, why did you come up with that assumption? Why did you come up with that answer so quick? That's the stuff you have to question, especially when you're faced with a problem that you're supposed to solve. You do some research, you come back with a answer. What you have is an answer, and you go, there it is. That's what I'm going to write. I'm going to write that conclusion. But you're not going back and saying, how did I arrive at that conclusion? What did I do to ensure that that conclusion is whole? See, these are part of that analytical mindset. You want to understand, did I cherry pick this? What confirmation bias did I use? Did you look at any of the assumptions? Did you do a key knowledge check? Yes. Did I use structured analytical techniques to help me? See, us as in the intelligence community, we're told to use structured analytical techniques and then be able to pen that out in our studies, assessments, bulletins. What did we use to come to a better decision? I've seen most of it half-assed. I've seen most of it just purely put in there that the analyst didn't actually do anything. But because it's a check in the box, in order to get this piece of intelligence released, oh yeah, I use brainstorming techniques, and this is the stuff and they'll put more thought into falsifying their structured analytic technique than as if they really did truly use ACH, devil's advocacy, brainstorming. I mean, you use the structured analytical techniques book for intelligence analysts, McPherson, right? And I've got what, one, two, three, four of the different Sage Press editions. And I used to be able to count the number of times my very first edition, which actually was the second edition, then I went on to the third, then I went on to the fourth, that between Hewer and Fearson, that I could count the number of times I opened that book when I was given my book while at the FBI Academy in 2010, 15 years ago. But as I started to push, I really started to see a significant use of myself in critical thinking. But then I even probably did more at the graduate and the doctoral level for master's thesis and doctorates and PhDs, telling students to go look at these structured analytical techniques for analysis. Just take out the word intelligence, and to be able to go, that's part of critical thinking. That's really where those authors were trying to get us to do, at least putting together some kind of structure that we could use. It becomes a habit. Remember, critical thinking is not a trait. So when we start really applying critical thinking and research, it should always lend itself to going down the rabbit holes. Should always have more questions than answers. Should always end up going, I need to go look at this source. How many of you that are researchers, whether professionally, academically, personally, look at articles? I'm not talking news articles or social media articles. How many of you are looking at articles and the reference section and going, especially this day and age, in the last 20 years, you should not have, in my humble opinion, should not have an article that does not include a URL, whether that's academically, scholarly, has a DOI, or just a full URL. I mean, yes, I myself have my books and I read these books, but I try to strive a little bit more to go out and find where these can be done electronically, because I want my audience to share in the experience that I was able to give them, book, chapter, paragraph, page, so they can have a better decision making process. And that big part of me is part of that analysis, if you will. So I'm going to go ahead and end it for today. I hope that you all continue to enjoy learning. If there is something that you feel that, I've missed, I need to go deeper on, I would love to hear from you. Again, because I think critical thinking is not something done in a vacuum. We all have to share perspectives, thoughts, ideas, and whether that's to expand or that is to drill down. I want you to be able to do that with me. Um, so I hope that today's 30-minute discussion will really help you in your journey to hone those critical thinking skills as well. So I will see you on Monday morning at 8:30. You all take care.